Now, rival U.S. and Russian resolutions addressing Israeli actions in Gaza both failed at the UN Security Council. One of the texts called for a ceasefire, the other a pause. For more on this story, we can bring in our international affairs editor, Ketevan Gojestani. Ketevan, great to see you. So it's all come down to semantics, hasn't it?
Yes, it's really a battle between those humanitarian pauses and a full-blown ceasefire. And you've seen the UN Secretary General, many Arab leaders call for an outright ceasefire. And as you said, those two resolutions, partly the reason why they failed is that one was vetoed because it called for a humanitarian pause. The other one was vetoed because it called for a ceasefire, and those countries cannot agree. And you're seeing that also play out in the European Union with the debate of how to call what they're calling for, those stops or halts in the conflict. It seems, according to a potential final draft statement by the EU, that they've possibly agreed on calling it a humanitarian corridors and pauses. So really, you're seeing this debate, and the United States were really the first ones to publicly spell out why they were so opposed to a ceasefire. John Kirby of the National Security Council saying that the only actor that benefits from a ceasefire right now would be Hamas, and that is why they're opposed to it. The UK also joining with Rishi Sunak saying that basically what they want is for humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. And for that, they need a safe environment. And for that, they need specific pauses as distinct from a ceasefire. Now, what would be the difference between a ceasefire and a humanitarian pause? The difference is really in the scope, the duration of those halts and conflicts. A general ceasefire would be all over this conflict. What these countries are calling for when they talk about humanitarian pauses is something geographically constrained, most likely over the Rafah border crossing, where that humanitarian aid is supposed to go in, and constrained in their duration. We're talking maybe several hours per day, once a week. We don't know exactly what those pauses would be, but they would be very specific for very specific reason at specific times. And that seems to be what we're going towards. But the problem is, without any agreement between the people who want a ceasefire and the people who want humanitarian pauses, in the meantime,
we get nothing.
There is nothing, and the conflict is going on.
Overnight, Israel said it conducted a ground incursion into Gaza. Now we have some global powers, including France, who are saying that full-scale looming invasion could be a bad idea.
Yes, President Emmanuel Macron calling it a mistake. And the United States also trying to work and put pressure on the Israelis to at least delay the ground invasion. Now, Joe Biden admitted to part of that, saying that he had discussed this with Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that it is, in the end, the Israelis' decision. He said, I did not demand it, I put it out to him, saying that he had discussed the matter and really focused on the release of hostages, saying that it would be good to delay the ground invasion until more hostages are released from Hamas's hands. But there's also been some U.S. media reporting on a possible other reason why the Americans would be trying to delay that ground invasion besides the hostages and the civilians in Gaza. And that would be, according to the Wall Street Journal, for example, it would be to relocate and move military equipment from the United States in the region, specifically missile defense systems in the region, so that they are prepared for what could happen if there is a ground invasion. The thinking by the Americans is that they're already seeing U.S. interests, U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria being targeted by Iran-backed militia, and they want to be prepared because they feel that if there is a ground invasion by Israeli forces, those targetings are going to pick up on Israel, on U.S. interest, and they want to be ready, and that's why they need a little bit more time for them to replace that military equipment, and that could be one of the options, one of the reasons, though the Americans have not publicly confirmed that move.